Hi everyone, and just kind of giving it a 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get started and just give everyone a chance to get in. Still just a couple of people coming in, so we'll just hold on for 1 or 2 more minutes. Thanks everyone. Okay. Just to let everyone know that this webinar will be recorded, and Michelle will probably email out then to the participant to make it more widely available then to the database thereafter today. So if you have to head off or people can't attend, it's no problem because it'll be recorded. Okay, so it's probably best to begin now and head on with this. As I said, the presentation itself will probably take around, I'd say it'll take around 40 minutes maybe at most. And then after that, we'll open up to questions and answers. So if there's any questions or answers or anything like that, then obviously I'll be here to answer them. So I'm just going to run through the presentation now, and hopefully there's plenty of information within this. There's with links, documents, portals. So I'm taking this from the perspective that some of you may be quite unaware or not that up to date in regards to where we are as I suppose, nation in BIM at the moment. So as you can see from the presentation here, the name that we're going to look at, BIM in Ireland 2020, a study of BIM maturity and diffusion in Ireland. And ultimately what this is going to look at is where we are in the Irish construction sector at this moment in time on our BIM journey. So first of all, my name is Barry McCauley. I'm a lecturer in the School of Multidisciplinary Technologies and Technological University, Dublin. I teach across all areas of digital construction and engineering. I have been in this research kind of area, BIM maturity, over the last 4 or 5 years. So I'll be able to give you a good overview and perspective of Ireland's current position in this at this moment in time. So this presentation is going to draw quite heavily from a recent report we're after writing. The report was called the BIM in Ireland 2019 report. And what the report did was provided a really state-of-the-art understanding of where we are as a nation in regards to BIM, and also compared to other different jurisdictions. This report is available now. I'll show you where to go to get it when we're finished the presentation. So it's quite important to understand where we are now. We have to take just a little bit of a step back. And so the whole ideology with this presentation is that we're going to compare where we are as now at this moment in time compared to where we were in 2017-18. So we're going to look at maybe over the last 4 years, where we are then to where we are now, and some of the key initiatives and policies put in place in order to kind of drive this agenda. And most importantly, as now, have we actually reached or initiated or achieved the targets that were put in place? Because I think 2017 was quite a big year for the Irish construction industry as regarding BIM. And it's quite interesting to see by the time you get to the end of this, all the initiatives and ideas put in place, whereabouts we are and have we achieved them. So starting back, I suppose the first sign of a real kind of call and implementation was BIM through the Forfast report in 2013. And this report aimed to accelerate the industry's return to a sustainable growth, ensure the sector was in a position to operate competitively, both domestically and internationally. The report outlined specific actions for sustainable growth with actions for Enterprise Ireland, industry representative bodies, HEIs and skill nets to work together to promote the use of BIM. Around that time as well, there was a midterm report released by the GCC, which stated that the contracts weren't really doing what they were supposed to be doing, and they weren't difficult to price risk. And so BIM was suggested as a possible tool that could be incorporated into this to assist with this. And as well as that, in 2014, we also had a Construction 2020 strategy. And this report made two specific actions. One was to support companies advancing to level 2 BIM capability. And this ultimately led to the BIM Enable and BIM Implement support systems from Enterprise Ireland. These are two support systems in place to help companies that want to go down this place to provide them with funding. And it'll comes in two different stages. One to help with training, and then it'll help with the rollout of the building information modeling, I suppose, Enterprise Ireland framework thereafter. Another key thing that came out in 2017 was the Action for Jobs, which included a requirement from the Office of Government Procurement and Enterprise Ireland to prepare a strategy for the adoption of BIM across the public capital programmes, the mandated manner in which is to be adopted across the public sector. And what this resulted in is this graph that you see here. And this graph was proposed by the GCC, or the Office of Government Procurement. So following consultation with a number of public bodies, the public works projects, the GCC prepared a position paper with the purpose of inviting industry responses. And this paper outlines the context and rationale for adopting BIM in Irish public works projects, and it proposed a proposed timeline, as we can see in here, ranging from 12 to 48 months for projects to adopt BIM. So these projects range from Band 1, which are of low complexity, such as low density housing projects, to Band 5, which are complex projects with a specialist operation and maintenance regimes, such as the National Children's Hospital, for example. Around this time, there was also an initiative launched called the BIM Innovation Capability Programme of Ireland. And the purpose of this programme was to capture the capability of the Irish construction industry and the higher education institute's response to increased requirement of BIM and Irish construction and engineering projects. This is where I came into play, and I worked with Dr. Alan Hoare and Professor Roger West as the lead postdoctoral researcher. And what we did was we enacted a number of different initiatives, which I'm just going to barely touch on today. But the idea is that we revisited a number of these in last year to see where we are, I suppose, progress-wise, and has there been an increase in BIM capabilities within the industry. This program was designed over 4 key work packages: information gathering, consultation, in-depth analysis, and disseminated findings. And some of the key things that we had in the information gathering was looking at global BIM studies, local studies, case studies, and surveys, and consultation for industries, public sector, and HEIs. So we really did get a good understanding of where the industry was and is going to at that time. I suppose a key element of the BIM Indication Programme was that we were responsible for feeding data to the National BIM Council of Ireland. And the purpose of the National BIM Council was that it was a national body to support the advancement of digital in the construction sector. It was formed as a recommendation of the Enterprise Ireland 2014 National BIM Forum, and it's a key measure in fulfilling the government's National Construction 2020. Ultimately, what the goal of the NBC was to produce a roadmap for the industry to follow in implementing a digital construction strategy over a 4-year period. And that was achieved. And I'm going to look at that in a good bit of detail today so you can understand, I suppose, the key document that exists in regards to the NBC, and I suppose it's the closest thing that we have as a nation toward the roadmap. So how we fed data to that was the first thing that we did was a global BIM study. And the purpose of the global BIM study was to look at regulatory requirements for BIM, champions driving BIM, and noteworthy publications across 28 different countries. The idea was that we would do this and understand the key themes and objectives that need to be met in order for a successful mandate. And it was quite interesting what we found at the time. We found that over 50% of countries reviewed had a regular requirement for BIM and were planning to introduce it in the near future. And over 60% of countries reviewed had produced a BIM guide or manual to assist in promotion of BIM. So some of these included the Spanish government, who were working towards a 2018 mandate at the time. The German company Planbanen were responsible for guiding, steering the implementation of BIM towards the 2020 mandate in Germany. The French government planned to apply BIM on 50,000 houses back in 2017. And the Chilean government also had a 10-year plan. Some of the more advanced countries included the UK, the Danish countries, most of Scandinavia. Denmark had a mandate in 2011. The likes of Singapore as well have had a number of different mandates and frameworks in place. We also had the likes of the USA, with large state owners such as the US Army Corps, General Service Administration, and as well as New York City, all representing different mandates. As you can imagine, the state is huge, so a mandate was really required for each state, but only some have adopted it. And Australia were also gaining traction in this particular area through New South Wales Transport, where they had BIM requirements in place. We also had an EU BIM task group at that stage as well, and they produced a framework. And the framework was used to propose and guide all European countries in regards to implementing and standardized BIM approach. So all of these documents are free. The Global BIM Study is up there, and as well as the EU BIM task group. So all these give you a good outline of what's going on across globally. And not a huge amount has really changed even since that report. Here's an example of some of the roadmaps used, where we had in here, we had the Scottish one, we had the South Korean, the English one, we had the German one, and we had the Canadian. And the Canadian one was quite simple. It just had pillars in here which were used for engagement, develop, deploy, evaluate, and sustain the BIM approach. So ultimately what we found out of this process was that in order for a successful mandate or a successful BIM project or framework to be put forward, it needs to review a number of different initiatives. These include review contracts and procurement, select and monitor Pathfinder projects, which is a pilot project, develop and disseminate national guidelines, fund and implement sustainability programs, national training, and adopt international standards. So most of these were taken into our own personal roadmap and used as potential pillars to build around. At the time as well, there was a number of different projects using BIM. We can see in here that there was schools, student accommodation, fit outs, commercial developments, data centers, hospitals, third levels. So while some of them might mean using what's termed your complete building information modeling level 2 process, and even level 2 as a word now is starting to significantly fade out. What you do have in here is a show that in some aspect, a lot of companies were using a form of building information modeling at that time. We also reviewed the HEIs and found out that nearly all of the different entities were providing some form of BIM training, and that's because they all seen a market in this different space. So for example, in TU Dublin, we had the MSc in Applied BIM. Galway had a higher diploma in BIM, and the likes of Waterford had an undergraduate honours degree in building information modelling. So actually what we'll be able to do is we can see the jump between 2017 to 2020 now in the next couple of minutes, and you'll be able to see, I suppose, even now at this stage, the HEIs are still driving this agenda, and there's a huge amount of courses available. Further to this, we also reached out to a number of procurement and public sector bodies. And what we found was the likes of the NDFA were promoting the use of BIM and best practice methodologies to use it on the likes of our course bundles. Grange Gorman Development were using it for their East and Central quads in Grange Gorman. The HSE were mandating it for the likes of the Children's Hospital. OPW had representatives on the EU BIM task group. TI were exploring it for their Metro project, and are actually using it now in a number of Lewis projects. Irish Water signalled their intent in the Ring Den project. Dublin Airport Authority were using a number of refurbishment projects. DA also have a BIM manager now in place driving it. Also as well, There was a number of awareness in County Council were growing, with the likes of Fingal rolling out for housing projects and South Dublin County Council, as well as Dunleary and Dublin City Council, all exploring building information modelling possibilities. What we have in here as well is that there are a number of different professional bodies. So the SSCI, I know we're talking here today, but all the professional bodies have a kind of a horse in this race, if you want to put it that way, and where they all have their own subcommittees. And I don't really want to get too much into this slide here, because I have a more detailed slide of fans to show what they're doing now at this moment in time, instead of reflecting back in 2017. But it's important that we get a picture of the landscape here, because in order to understand our journey and where we're going and where we're at, we need to understand where we were, I suppose, back there. So what we use in order to understand the different maturity and capability of the Irish sector was a thing called the macro BIM adoption models. And this was designed by two gentlemen called Dr. Bill Arsukar and Dr. Mohammed Qasim, academics. And what this does was assesses the country's current BIM adoption policies, compares BIM maturity with different countries, and the application of the model in developing the national BIM adoption policy. So we used this in 2017 to really understand where we were at that time as an industry, maturity and capability wise, who were the key leaders, stakeholders with the government's policies, and I suppose what needed to be done. And so this is probably where the second half of the presentation will concentrate on the results between 2017 as well as 2019-20. And this forms part of what's called the BIM-E initiative. And this is another website called bimexcellence.org. And if you log on here later on, you'll get access to principles and structures, research publications, a dictionary database of all the key terms and terminologies. And it was a really good starting point for understanding building information modeling capabilities and how it's been used across the industry worldwide. And this brings us to our digital roadmap. So at the end of 2017, the MBC released our digital roadmap. And ultimately, the main objective of this was to 20% reduction in project delivery program, a 20% increase in construction export, and a 20% reduction in capital costs. And an aim to do this through 4 key pillars. And 4 key pillars were leadership, standards, education, training, and procurement. And each one of these, you can see in here, had key criteria one must hit in order to satisfy it by certain timelines. There's some of the key recommendations that came from this included the formation of a national BIM centre, so a BIM centre of excellence, to strengthen and support Ireland's commitment to adopting common collaborative framework of open BIM standards. So open BIM standards is a kind of standards that can be used universally across projects. It goes in partnership with open BIM software. So if you ever heard the terminology of the likes of industry foundation class or COBE or model view definitions, these all form part of the open BIM agenda, where you're not restricted to one software and you're able to work in an open environment where you can share models and processes and information in regards to exporting from one software to another through the open BIM format. It aimed to develop a consistent, seamless and coherent digital experience for students in the Irish industry, and also support a public sector BIM adoption mandate. So some of the key recommendations made, including the leadership. So we aim to have national support, so set up a national resource centre, identify a suitable individual or executive and support team to lead the implementation programme, create a platform for leadership to drive a digital transformation programme, and collaborate internationally to make the case for structured, validated, comparable data. And the established executive will be an example. In a number of different countries, they've set up, the government would reach out and I suppose give funding to different industry bodies. So Plan Bon in Germany, they had the French, I can't pronounce the name, Scottish Future Trust, UK BIM Alliance. So they've all received funding in this space in order to deliver on deliver on the agendas set forward by the respective governments. The second one was standards, so to adopt open BIM adoption. incorporate international standards such as ISO 9650 and PAS 1192, so we'll look at them later on. An NSI certification, so the government and industry support, so to develop standardization, accreditation programs, online tools and support. So, for example, if you looked at the Scottish Future Trust BIM portal, so if you just type that into Google, it'll bring you to a really, really good resource. And what that enables you to do is to do return of investment, so you can put in all the data in your project and feedback, the expected profit, as well as capabilities, kind of understanding what capabilities your company has and what you need to do to improve that, and grading tools as well to let you know that what level you are at in regards to your company. So all these tools were set up by Scottish Future Trust, and the whole idea with this proposal was to develop them from an Irish perspective, and as well as align building control and public asset information standards. The education and training was to develop a national task force to kind of take this over and drive it. Assessment diagnostics. So this is developing an online BIM self-assessment tool for companies. Develop a base learning outcome, so come across some consistent learning outcomes that can be shared across multiple colleges and universities, so we're all teaching the same thing. Bring BIM into schools a little bit earlier, so try to maybe target a TYO, or even kind of going back as far as the primary school, and that's been done up in the north as well as the UK. We started to do that here in Ireland, so we'll have a look at how that's been done at the moment. And the need for professional institutions and bodies to be consistent in specifying BIM competencies. And finally, the procurement pillar, which was predominantly to determine a clear framework for procurement of BIM and public sector construction projects. So that was quite important, and realistically that kind of would fall in line with the Irish government. So this roadmap is available to download at the moment, so I think Michelle will distribute these slides thereafter, and you'll be able to kind of follow some of the links in here, and the roadmap is one of them. So the roadmap is available for consumption, so it's worth a read. It's quite easy to understand, and there's a good bit more going on in it than just what I covered there. That was just a key criteria. But also in 2017, even though they're separate initiatives, the government released their strategy to increase the use of digital technology in create public works. And I wouldn't call it a mandate, more of a requirement or a recommendation for BIM to be required in the design, construction, and operation of public buildings and infrastructure over the next 4 years. While these were two different initiatives between the roadmap and this strategy, they do have a lot of synergies and they do work in partnership with each other. And there was members of the Office of Government Procurement sitting on the National BIM Council, and they did help write the procurement pillar. So there is a good transition between the two of them, even though they are independent of each other. So that brings us to where we are today. So that's where we left off in 2017. And at that stage, it was quite, we were on a really exciting journey. We were advancing quite respectively, and we were coming in line with a number of different other countries. And so one of the key things that didn't come out of this was that there was no funding made available to execute the National BIM Roadmap. So that's had a significant knock-on effect, but what we have found is that the industry has continued to drive it and meet some of the targets by themselves. So if we look at where we are, I suppose, public sector-wise or governmental-wise, and some of the key recommendations made, we can see that a number of recommendations are still calling for the use of building information modelling. So within the Action for Plan for Jobs 2018, there was a key theme that digital technologies are becoming increasingly disruptive, persuasive, so in particular robotics and artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, virtual reality, blockchain. So they suggested this report, and in order to prepare the sector, government should propose new pathways, which they have, for reskilling into ICT technology roles at apprenticeship level, and put in place provisions to attract and retain talent. The expert group on future skill needs, this advises the Irish government on the current and future skill needs of the economy, confirmed that prefabrication and the use of BIM systems will have a substantial impact on the sector over time. The report that we see up in here, which is the skills for the construction sector, assessment of 2018, 8 to 18 strategies, which was only published in December gone, makes a key recommendation for the enhancement of productivity and innovation within the construction industry through promotion of BIM. So they really believe here that BIM is a powerful tool in driving efficiencies and increasing productivity. The Engineers Ireland State Report, also which focuses on Ireland's housing sector, which was allocated a D grade, makes a clear reference to the vital contribution and modern methods of construction, including BIM, can play in expediting delivery of housing provision in Ireland. Construction Sector Performance and Prospects Report 2019 states Ireland's construction industry must embrace digital technologies and proactively. Also, the Project 2040, which I think most of we all know about, introduced a vehicle to ensure regular and open dialogue between the government and the construction sector. And this was done by establishing a construction sector working group. And these are now responsible for, I suppose, our BIM and digital strategy moving forward. The CSG, which they're called, consists of representatives of key industry bodies, as well as senior representatives of government departments and agencies responsible for policy and delivery of infrastructure. So they have a subgroup formed to look at specifically the growth and productivity of the construction sector. So this brings us back to the macro BIM maturity models. And so we decided, with the roadmap and the government strategy now being in place for 2 years, it'd be interesting to see, have we made much progress and where we're stunted? And also, most importantly, is through a lack of funding, whereabouts we are in regards to meeting a number of key targets set out in the roadmap. So we were quite interested to see, as a research group, to see, has a lack of funding really impacted our journey? So this macro model that we're looking at here, this one clarifies how BIM fields, so such as technology, process, and policy, interact with capability stages, modeling, collaboration, and integration, to generate 9 areas for target BIM diffusion. So simply, this is looking at how advanced we are when it comes to modeling, collaboration, and integration in regards to the technologies associated in each, the processes, and the policies. So obviously, we're looking at the UK, they'd have policies in place for all of these 3 particular areas. So we found that 2000 results show that the Ireland was mature for modelling processes and model workflows, but it was quite weak in regards to collaboration processes and policies. The BIM diffusion model for 2019 determines that Ireland has experienced a steady increase in both collaboration and integration processes and policies. So this improvement in policy and processes in regard to the BIM collaborative fields can be attributed to the roadmap and the government's digital strategy. However, more significant initiative which is impacting the industry is the introduction of ISO 9650. So ISO 9650 provides a standardized approach to using BIM for the delivery phase of assets. So this has been released since last year, and now being an international standard, this is the recognized way of structuring data and applying building information modeling across the life cycle or across the delivery part of a project. And why this hasn't really come as too much of a shock to the industry as a whole is that the BIM community in Ireland previously reported that it was comfortable working with the requirements of BS 1192 and PAS 1192 suite of documents. These documents have heavily influenced the ISO 9650 standards. So it meant that we've resulted in quite a smooth transition for the community, which has contributed to the increase and the diffusion of this model. The maturity model should also exhibit further growth in the coming years, as the NSI now offers third-party certification to ISO 9650. So this scheme caters for 3 main categories of organizations: employers, designers, and contractors. So other certification bodies, such as the BRE, have developed a certification pathway that offers BIM certification and are now focusing in the Irish market due to the uptake of BIM within the sector. So outside the NSI, there are a number of different possibilities to gain accreditation. This just gives you an overview of a recap of some of the key things that this model found. Ultimately, it found that Ireland has experienced a steady increase in both collaboration and integration for process and policies. This improvement in processes in regard to collaboration can be partly attributed to the roadmap and digital strategy. Also, a more significant issue has been 9650, with further growth expected now through the NSI accreditation model. The second one, macro maturity components model, identified 8 components for establishing and measuring the BIM maturity of countries and macro organisation scales. So this includes the country's objectives, the stages they were at, what milestones you had in place, champions and drivers, what regulatory frameworks, any noteworthy publications, learning education, and measurement and benchmarks, as well as standards and deliverables and technology infrastructure. So it took a really wide perspective of some of the most important aspects to ensure we have a successful roadmap. So this is just a comparison that we can see in here between 2017 and 19. And we can see some of the growths here, which I'll go into now in a second. And the spider diagram can show that in a number of areas we've remained quite static, but in some of them we have grown, and most of them are to do with our frameworks and publications and milestones, which we didn't have at the time in 2017. This would have been done just before the launch of the roadmap. So the largest growth has come within objectives and milestones, regulatory framework, and noteworthy publications. So in 2017, concerns were raised, and unless a regulatory framework for BIM is promoted from within the government, that these critical areas will stagnate and regress. So the roadmap, the government's digital strategy, and IS publication will all played a part in elevating these figures. While others have not significantly grown, they do remain stable. And this brings us back onto the education, which has played a key role in this particular area. So we're looking at the education, we can see that a number of courses have become available since 2017, where nearly all colleges have expanded their offering. And a number are starting to offer or look at how they can integrate BIM into their undergraduate courses, as well as kind of bring, I suppose, shared modules throughout the whole of the undergraduate. So there's kind of BIM integrated into QS courses, construction management, structural engineering, geomatics, and so it kind of brings a more collaborative approach. In regards to Technological University of Dublin, we have 2 predominantly BIM programs of note. One is the BSc Honours in BIM and Digital Construction. This is our undergraduate course that launched this year. So this is a 60 ECTS credit course, and it's 1 year, and it's an add-on, so you have to have a level 7 coming in, a relevant work experience, and after a year you come out with an honours degree in BIM. After that, you have a ladder on your way towards an MSc in Applied Building Information Modelling and Management, but you can exit after a year with a postgraduate cert or postgraduate diploma after 2 years, or go on and complete the MSc. So we're the only university at the moment in Ireland that has a MSc in this particular area. I'm the current program chair for, so if anyone that's here today has any interest in this or would like to know more further detail, please reach out to me thereafter. I'd be happy to kind of go through this in a bit more detail. Also, what we found in Ireland as well in 2019 compared to 17 was there's a lot of more research going on. So for example, the Horizon BIMSER project, which some of you might know of, I'll just go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. Limerick have a Horizon 2020 BIMSED project where they're looking at developing tools to help with BIM and NSEP. GMIT had the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning for BIM Future Projects. UCC are developing a BIM-based toolkit for renovation for the BIM FAB project. DCU has made funding available for a postdoctoral scholar, Investigate IFC, when it comes to digital planning. And UCD are doing a lot of work in the area of model free definitions, while TU Dublin, Trinity, and CETA all continue to do important research in the area of maturity frameworks. And there's also a number of other TU Dublin initiatives, such as blockchain, Mannequin Matches is doing a lot of work in there, as well as frameworks and geomatics. So just a little bit about the Energy BIM project, which was a project I was involved in for the for TU Dublin. And what this is, it offers training, and I think the training is free at the moment in bite-sized micro modules. So we developed a micro-module badge scheme where you can choose a course, and then over the course, that course could have maybe 13 different micro-modules. So if you don't want to do the course, you can dip in and just pick one or the other, and it'll allow you to kind of do a nice pathway, I suppose, throughout the whole project. And this is in partnership with Croatian, Macedonian, Portuguese, and Northern Irish partners. So we're trying to get this kind of, I suppose, validated across the different countries. But it's a really good way. For example, if you clicked into the BIM dimensions there, it'll bring you into a lesson plan, which maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours, with light assessment in order to kind of go through that. So it's quite a innovative and interesting project that's live now. And if you follow the Energy BIM cert.eu tag there, you'll be able to access it and avail of some of the training. And as I said, I think it's free at the moment, so it's a good chance to kind of get in there and test it. So model C is called a diffusion dynamics model. So this model assesses and compares directional pressures and mechanisms affecting how diffusion unfolds within a population. So the model includes 3 diffusion dynamics: top down, middle out, and bottom up. And ultimately what it's trying to find out is who's leading this BIM agenda. Is it the government? Is it the bottom up, I suppose, the professionals? Or is it the larger kind of contractors? So what we found out is that the model has come back and said ultimately that the larger organizations or industries associations are pushing the BIM agenda within this industry and not the government. So results are similar to those of 2017. So what we found in there was that a lot of big contractors are reaching down into the supply chains and upskilling that way and providing free training and supervision on sites. So it suggests again that this actually hasn't changed in the last 2 years. And the reason for this ultimately is the government has not provided strategic funding to date or guidance documents to assist with BIM implementation, resulted in this model remaining static. So unless adequate funding is provided to support the government's digital strategy, it may risk further alienating SMEs within an already demanding and extremely competitive sector. And that's a key thing, is that there isn't a lot of tools or resources available for SMEs. And that's why the likes of the BIM cert project does offer potential avenues of staff, as well as other initiatives that exist throughout Europe. This model here identifies and assesses and compares the actions that policymakers take or can take to facilitate market-wide adoption. The model includes 3 policy approaches: passive, active, and assertive. So ultimately what we're looking at here is these are mapped up against make aware, encourage, and observe. So for example, if we looked at the UK's BIM strategy, it would be quite assertive. So it would be prescribe in the communication section, it would be enforce in the engage, and it would be control in the monitor. In 2017, what we found was that the policy makers in Ireland were mostly passive, with some evidence of active approaches or with little or no assertive activities. So we were make aware, encourage, and observe. So a real kind of hands-off, stand-back processes. Our results are similar in 2019. It is encouraging to observe that the Irish government is now seen as taking a more active approach when it comes to communication. But this is evident by recent initiatives such as the establishment of the CSG. And a part of their remit, as I explained, was devising BIM and other digital innovations and processes. We also have a public sector BIM group, and this has played a valuable role in educating members of the public sector through workshops and hackathons. So while results have improved in comparison to 2017, there is a slight reduction in incentivization despite an increase in training. But these figures would be predicted to decrease or stagnate if the government fails to provide the industry with more encouragement, support to adopt BIM. And this just goes over again, just what I went through there. So I won't repeat. The final one, macro mod, this looks at, I suppose, the key players within the industry. So it looks at the roles played by industry stakeholders and the network of actors. It identifies 9 BIM players across stakeholders, distributed across 3 BIM fields: technology, process, and policy, as defined within the framework. So the 9 groups are policymakers, education institutes, construction organisations, individual practitioners, technology developers, service providers, associations, community practice and advocates. And ultimately what I wanted to know was who are the leaders when it comes to policy, who are the leaders when it comes to process, and who are the leaders when it comes to technology. And what we found out is just a comparison between the two spider graphs and the jump that you can see between the different organizations between 2017 and 19. And what we found was that in 2017, the technology developers were seen as the most influential technology players. However, developers, service providers, and advocates are now seen as co-leaders in this space. Policymakers, the education institutes continue to have much more higher BIM diffusion compared to policymakers. But on a concerning note, the survey shows a significant drop for policymakers within this area, which indicates that despite increasing objective milestones, frameworks, and a move towards an active communication strategy, industry and overall are not satisfied with the government's leadership and support. The education institutes have responded in kind to this, as seen through the growing number of undergraduate and postgraduate courses. And some of the key institutes that I put a slide back in 2017 when we were going through that, and I looked at some of the key professional bodies. So in 2019, we set up what was called the BIM in Ireland Umbrella Forum, and this was coordinated by CEDA and chaired by myself. And this had the purpose of providing an additional neutral and holistic environment for the sharing of information for review or comment between the different professional institutes, subcommittees. So it's just another way of documenting and sharing what each one of the subcommittees are doing, and offering an additional platform where they can integrate, because they already are integrating with themselves, but suppose just offer another one where we could then report back. And what we found is that all of the different institutes are doing something in this particular space. So the ACEI BIM committee is working on a number of tasks, including the CIC's BIM vision. The BIM Academic Forum Ireland, it's kind of gone a bit stagnant, but the purpose was that they would probably lead maybe the education task force. The BIM regions, so there's a number of BIM regions throughout the country set up, and each one of these have different events. So there's an Eastern BIM region as well. So we'll probably have an event. We were planning to have an event for June, but for obvious reasons it was cancelled. BRE are providing the NSA team with audit-based training, as well as a number of pathways to themselves. See, the BIM group is on LinkedIn, so if you are interested, go off and join that, and you'll be able to, integrate with a couple of thousand different members within there. So it's quite a good and active platform. Other ones include the CIF, and they were after launching a number of documents that are free to download, including their policies and standards guides, their bidding for BIM guide, and their starter pack. The CIC are brought together 6 major Irish bodies: RII, ACI, Engineers Ireland, CIF, SCSI, Building Materials Federation. They're all feeding information back into the construction sector group. Engineers Ireland has a BIM advisory group, and now Caroline Spillane chaired the NBC. Like are doing a lot of work as well with the different bodies. NSI, as well as having the certification program, have also in the process of developing the annex for ISO 9650. And part of the ISO 9650 was suggested that each country should have a national annex that should be attached to the document. So at this moment in time, the NSI's mirror committee are in the process of developing that. There's a public BIM group which has Transport Infrastructure Ireland, Office of Government Procurement, Department of Education and Skills, Dublin City Council, Grange Gorman, and they all meet regularly. Revit Users Group have a number of different meetings about how to use Revit and some of the advances, including Dynamo, so that's another one they're free to attend. RII have recently released their BIM starter pack, and that has guidance documents on employer information requirements, BIM execution plans, model information delivery templates. So there's ones that are based in an Irish setting there that was only released last year, so that's a terrific part. The SCCI are doing some terrific work in that, led by Dr. Albert Beaton and Eugene Nicolai. And they are making contact with the RI about feeding into their documents from a quantity surveying perspective, and as well as BIM becoming a standing agenda on their monthly committee meetings in the SSI in general. So there's a lot going on in this space, and hence why we're here today. At TEI have a number of different research initiatives in place and are rolling out BIM on a number of projects, especially Lewis and the Women in BIM. This is an organisation chaired by Emma Hayes in Ireland, and it aims to draw together women in key strategic positions relating to technology and architecture and allow a portal to be shared information and interaction. So that's quite an interesting group as well. So I suppose this brings us to near the end of the presentation. And what does the data that we collected in 2019 tell us about where we are in the roadmap? What have we missed? What have we hit? And what are we really in danger of not touching? So if we look at the leadership pillar, we see that while government has not provided the leadership required, as of yet, there is still evidence that the industry continues to mature. The recent NBS survey, it was reported that 76% of respondents had adopted BIM. According to the macro maturity model, leadership is presented by construction organisations, professional institutes, and the third level education sectors. So each one of these are all still driving the BIM agenda. Despite no strategic funding being provided to date from the government, some public sector organisations continue to push BIM. And also a collective consortium of industry bodies has represented the findings to the CSG and a roadmap for what service the Centre of Excellence should offer. As I just discussed there was an MBS CETA survey done, and the MBS survey is usually UK focused, but in the 2019 one, the Construction IT Alliance worked with them to do an Irish one. So that's available to download there as well through the web link. And ultimately what it found was that 76% of responses have adopted BIM, as we just said. It also came that when it came to the impact of the Irish government's BIM adoption strategy, it said only 27% believed it quite successful. However, the embassy roadmap launch has resulted in better response, with 44% thinking it'd be successful. The primary barriers to BIM implementation included the lack of in-house expertise, no client demand, and a lack of training, as well as the absence of an established contractual framework. In regard to the roadmap, the Digital Centre of Excellence, we wrote a paper recently on what this could potentially entail, and we compared I think it was 6 or 8 different centres of excellence across the world, and came across key themes that would associate between all of them, including what their missions, scope of services, what kind of partner models, funding models. So I'm not going to go into that. It's a little bit outside of scope today, but if you want to have a look at that paper is available through this link. The standards pillars has actually made quite good progress. The NSI has now developed a BIM certification program. We're in the development of the annex is finished. It should be going out in the next month for review. The ongoing release of templates and guiding documents such as the RI BIM pack continues to progress in this area. We have experts attending CEN meetings. Funding has been made available for postdoctoral scholar and DCU to investigate how IFC can be used for digital planning and building regulation. What we haven't really progressed is development of online tools and supports to help implement national tools. And realistically, I say a significant body of funding would have to be put in place for that to be achieved. The third level education sector continues to be seen as a primary entity for upskilling. Professional institutes are also continuing to upskill internally within this area. Organisations such as CETA continue to promote guidance to both large enterprises and SMEs within the sector through workshops, discounted training, conferences, etc. To target the skill shortage at its core, it's recommended to explore exemplary international interests such as Class Their Own BIMcraft. BIMcraft is it's a take on Minecraft. What it does, it's kind of been adopted to get children into using it from a Minecraft perspective, and you could go into a house and they build a house and they get money to build it, and they could go in and they could see that the house is cold, and they kind of figure out that it's cold because there's no insulation in the floor. So it's a really good kind of tool, and it's been rolled out in Northern Ireland and Scotland. Class Their Own is an initiative where they're bringing in the likes of BIM and technology and construction really heavily into the UK curriculum for secondary level. So we actually have ran this in a transition year program here. Nigel Wern, a TU Dublin graduate who's also a secondary school teacher, ran that here. So we're looking at it could go into 2 or 3 now by the end of the year. So we're looking at kind of, well, Nigel's looking at kind of this area particularly, and I suppose making it a little bit more consistent. At present, there's no national BIM education task force, and development of an online BIM assessment tool for companies, a base level outcome target has not been progressed. And finally, the procurement pillar. So the procurement process of a phased BIM mandate for public work projects is on schedule to commence in Q2 2019. As of yet, there's no online support or refusal of sustainability or suitability of provisions made for developing construction contracts. Concerning the maturity, despite writing in this area, benchmarks and processes may stagnate unless clear directions provided. So on summary, Ireland has shown a steady increase in some aspects of its BIM maturity since 2017. The Irish AE sector, by default, has led in the execution of parts of the roadmap, and in doing so, achieved a number of significant targets. There are still many vital objectives outstanding that will need funding, and the key aims of the roadmap are to be achieved. And the AE sector now finds itself at a crossroad with a push from government required to advance BIM maturity within the industry, as well as the industry cannot afford to stay static and must advance in line with global jurisdictions to maintain its competitiveness. So this report here that I just went through today is available. So if you contact sports.c.ie, Suzanne, she will be able to direct you towards it. I think it's I think there's a fee of €10 for the report. So if you have any interest in this, I recommend downloading it. It's quite an easy read, and it really does give us a state-of-the-art understanding of the industry. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that was quite interesting. So I'm happy to answer any question for the next 5-10 minutes. If you have any, I can monitor the Q&A down in here, or Michelle can as well. Thanks, Park. Hopefully he's got something out of it. As I said, Michelle will distribute or upload the slides, and there's plenty of links and information on it. So there's a lot of information out there at the moment in this area. And you can see as a country that we're doing quite well, but we've certainly been impacted by a lack of funding.
Thanks for that, Barry. As you mentioned, I'll upload the recording and people can access that on the e-learning platform.
Yeah. A couple of Q&As coming in here. How has it improved the quantity surveying profession? Well, I think from my perspective, I think it's improved the quantity surveying profession, that it offers a tool that can enable value engineering and to generate quantities quicker and faster. Now, the thing about that from a quantity surveyor is that I really believe that this will help redefine, you will have a key role in this particular industry, because at the end of the day, you the model validators, the ones that ensure that what's coming out of the model is actually accurate. So I know the likes of Denmark, for example, they don't, the quantity surveying profession is really practiced over there. It's integrated into construction management professional. And so a couple of an Irish professional has made a good life himself offering that particular skill set, and they're being integrated into the project a lot earlier. I think that's quite important for the QS to ensure that, the models, that when models are being created, they're actually being created to ensure that, you can actually generate and access and produce quantities quite quickly. There's IT software and TU Dublin such as Costex, and if you have accurate models along with templates and costing schedules, you can really generate and produce quantities quite quickly. It just will take a lot of time then to go through to ensure that's what what you produced is actually quite accurate. And then if you integrate that with all the other tools, such as early sustainability analysis, conceptual modeling, all these really offer potential viability for the client to get really early costings, accurate costings that will kind of help influence them and give them better decision-making tools. So definitely from a value engineering tool, I think it's a gold mine for the QS profession. Any other questions? Thanks, Owen. Leon, I don't know. I'm not a quantity surveyor, so you know, to be honest, I can't really answer that question. So, you know, I mean, to be honest, BIM and the QS profession in Ireland still is quite. It's not too mature, and there's only a couple of companies really practicing it. And so, between an agreed rules and measurements, I'd imagine we're a bit far away from that just yet. I think I probably need a little bit more traction in this space before you probably get to that.
Thanks, Barry. I think we can probably wrap it up there. I don't see any more questions coming in.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you for that today. And the recording, if anyone wants it, they can email events@scsi.ie. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Have a good day.